love of nature type thing.
Right.
I went and found a segment of a poem from Whitman that reminded me, for some reason, of what you did, the flying and so on. It's from the song myself, of course, but it goes, which is his big poem. But it goes, solitary at midnight in my backyard, my thoughts gone from me a long while, speeding through space. Oh, there's a flying thing. Speeding through heaven and the stars, speeding among the 7 satellites in the broad ring, and the diameter of 80,000 miles, speeding with tailed meteors, throwing fireballs like the rest. I don't know if you know Whitman. Do you know Whitman? Have you studied him?
No, I haven't studied him, but I've heard of Walt Whitman.
I think you might enjoy him.
Yeah.
And he's a good poet. There are others you might enjoy. I wish I could give you a list, but I'll leave that up to your teacher. Try Ovid.
Okay.
Just the hell of it. He's really beautiful.
Metamorphosis.
I've mentioned this many times just because I was reading it at the hospital today with my mother-in-law, who I took to the emergency room with congestive heart failure at dawn, as I mentioned. And so I was reading Ovid again for some reason. I just grabbed it. And it's amazing the amount of Western literature that has grown out of that book. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales was structured the same way as Metamorphoses. Shakespeare took lots of it. T.S. Eliot, right up to the present day. It's just an incredible book.
Ezra Pound.
Ezra Pound, yes, he used it. And it goes back, of course, and you have the lyric voice. You have the lyric voice, as Ovid did, So you shouldn't let it go to waste. Read Ovid, read Whitman. But Ovid even more than Whitman, I would think. Anyway.
I think you make a really apt comparison with the Whitman poem. And with that, it works perfectly because Whitman was with what I said with the Bible, because Whitman was highly influenced by the Bible. And that poem, Song of Myself, is about humanity. It was post-Civil War America, or during that time, and America was splitting at the seams. And what are we at right now, where we're having, ecological crisis? And it's not a thing of like, we need to, as humanities and humans, as Americans, join forces and work together. No matter if you were a slave or you were a rich landowner. That was Whitman's message in that poem. That's why it's called Blades of Grass, or Leaves of Grass, excuse me. So that's exactly what she's doing.
Yeah. Well, that begs the whole question, though. What is the purpose of poetry? I was having an interesting conversation with Steve Cowett about that.
Right.
You know Steve?
Yeah, I know Steve. He's a
some
big
people
guy,
call him the poet laureate of San Diego.
Right.
He's a wonderful guy, and he's both a bohemian and a protester from the '60s, and a sort of forest god type. He's got real craggy but in a funny, bouncy sort of way.
Yeah.
But he's also very stoic. He's aware of fate. He's aware that we really can't change things. It's some fundament, and we're all going to die, all that stuff. So he's got this interesting pressure between these two ways of looking things, which of course is the human pressure. That's what we are. That's where we are. But that begs the question, how do you balance that in your own work? I know you sort of lean towards the...
Well, like I said, my work is an amalgamation of my own urban upbringing in San Diego, but it also, I was a traditionally trained poet. I wrote metrically at beginning. I wrote in blank first. I wrote sonnets, Petrarchan. I think it's a superior form than the Elizabethan, but that's me.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't like the little couplet at the end. It's a little obtrusive, but it's,
I know.
I try to write with a purpose and try to say something, but I think, like anything else, you have to be true to the poem. And if you have to alter details, if you have to make 3 characters into one, it's about what's going to make the best poem. And and I think you need to be responsible for your message, but it's like if you write we're talking about love poetry, you can't just be like, I love you. That doesn't make a good poem.
No. Love is much more complex.
Exactly.
Well, Okay, well, now you're on to read your poem, which I really liked. I really enjoyed your poem.
Thank you, Jack. I
It was
appreciate that.
It had a strength to it that surprised me in such a young professional poet. I mean, it was older than your years, so that's great. Anyway, with that introduction.
Okay, thank you. Coveralls. The orange coveralls flamed around me in one size fits all, and no matter how I stood, they slouched and bent me. In the shipyard, there were no mirrors, but in the ocean's reflection or the pools in the dry docks, I could see how the leathers covered my bony clavicle and my arms were only as wide as the torch. I interviewed in a flour-splattered rayon, but was hired because my uncle was foreman. In training, I met Lucy. Straightening out the crooked cuts in my bulkheads, she showed me how an orange stream pours off a perfect bevel. Once in the bilges, I asked what brought her to the bottom of this boat, measuring and cutting walls. Pulling off her suede glove, wiping sweat and ash away, on her hand shined a green 13. Secretaries don't have tattoos leaked from a respirator. And by lunch, we were burnt by sparks. By 3, we sneezed black. But Foreman flirted with her, using the last banging mallets to get close and whisper. Wrenching hoses from our torches, metallic dust on our neck ignited in the sun. The top half of her coveralls, unbuttoned and wrapped, slowly melted down as the whistles blew. After training, I worked on frigates. She worked on tankers. I walked by her work site, and Lucy'd be cutting a tanker's wall, golden ashes dropping from a chariot of rusted pipe and planks. Looking up, shaking the wind, shaking the burn hole, from ankle to knee gone, the thin blue cloth gone, I watched Lucy rise.
Wow. That's a love poem, right? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Remember, I told you to be scathing, but I'll give you a chance to think of the scathing, hard-hitting questions you're going to ask in just a second. You know, I've got to assume this poem's based on a real person, right, Lucy?
Yes, it is. I worked in a shipyard when I was 18.
Yeah.
I liked teaching and being a professor a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't very good at it. This is accurate. It's an accurate depiction of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was a burner. I cut metal, so I had a torch and leathers and a coverall. And I met Lucy, and she was much better at working in the shipyard than me. In the end, there's this image of the coveralls, and it's a thin material. And I literally that day when I saw her, it's like right before I got laid off. I didn't work there that long. I had caught my leg on fire, and I had this big burn hole. And so I'm walking, and there was literally almost nothing, no cloth right here. And I had, I cut my hose a bunch of times. I wasn't very good, unfortunately, But
she took pity on you?
No, she was just better than me. So we were friends. We were trained together, and then I would see her once in a while, and it was a platonic love, But it was definitely, I admired her. I was like, wow, this is like, she's out here killing.
That's sweet. That's sweet. 18, huh?
I was 18, yeah, and she was 30.
Yeah.
So,
oh, yeah, I remember that. I was 18 once, too. Yeah.
Yeah. I just really admired her. Just coming there and just being a woman, and she was like the only really, there was very few women in
the mystery, the wonder of it all.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, this poetry business can be rough. In Border Voices, we've been lucky. One of our events drew 9,000 people to Cox Arena.
Wonderful.
To see Maya Angelou, but I've seen poetry fairs, as have you, thrown by other people, or the only people who show up seem to be the organizers. It's really sad. There's 10 people, and they're the people who organize the damn thing, and a few volunteers. What tips might you have for some people who might be sitting here or might be interested in getting into poetry someday? How do they make a living out of it?